The wind screamed across the frozen wasteland of Helios 7 like a wounded animal. Taeyang Kim stood at the reinforced window of his outpost, watching the sky turn from pale blue to angry purple. He had seen bad storms before, but this one felt different. The ice crystals in the air glowed with an eerie light, and the temperature gauge on his wrist display kept dropping. -170 degrees. -180. Still falling, his radio crackled to life. Outpost 7, this is Colony Central. Evacuation order in effect. All personnel must return to main dome immediately. Taeyang pressed the response button. Central, this is Outpost 7, I'm staying. Someone needs to watch the reactor. There was a pause. The voice on the other end sounded tired. Acknowledged Outpost 7. Good luck, Kim. The radio went silent. Taeyang was alone now, just the way he preferred it. He had been alone for 3 years, ever since he left the military. Ever since the war took everything from him. His squad, his friends, his peace of mind. Out here on this frozen rock at the edge of known space, nobody asked questions about his past. Nobody cared that he woke up screaming most nights. He moved through the outpost with practiced efficiency, checking seals on the doors and windows. The structure was small but solid, built to withstand the worst Helios 7 could throw at it. 3 rooms total. Living quarters, workshop, and the reactor room. Everything a man needed to survive and nothing more. The storm hit with full force an hour after sunset. The outpost shuddered and groaned under the assault. Wind speeds hit 400 kilometers per hour. The windows, made of triple-layered polymer designed for spacecraft, actually flexed inward. Taeyang sat in his chair, reading an old book on paper, something his commander Daewon Park had given him years ago. The book talked about finding purpose after war. He had read it 17 times. He still did not understand it. That was when he heard the howling. At first, he thought it was just the wind. But no, this was different. This had rhythm, pattern, desperation. Taeyang set down his book and moved to the sensor display. The screen showed 3 large heat signatures outside his door. Moving. Alive. He pulled up the colony database on his terminal, searching for native life forms. Helios 7 had some small creatures, nothing bigger than a rabbit. These signatures were massive. Each one was the size of a large human, maybe bigger. The howling came again, louder this time, closer. Taeyang grabbed his rifle from the wall mount. His hands moved automatically, checking the charge, flicking off the safety. Old habits. Soldier habits. He approached the door slowly, checking the external camera feed on the small screen beside the entrance. What he saw made him freeze. 3 creatures stood in the swirling storm outside. They looked like wolves, but wrong. Too big. Their fur glowed with soft bioluminescent light, blue and purple and silver, barely visible through the ice coating their bodies. Their eyes reflected the outpost lights, showing clear intelligence. One of them, the largest with sky-blue fur, lifted a paw and scratched at the door. Not attacking, asking, begging. Taeyang's mind raced. Unknown alien species, possibly dangerous. Protocol said to maintain lockdown during storms. Protocol said unknown life forms should be reported and avoided. Protocol said a lot of things, but the creatures looked half dead. Their movements were slow, weak. Frost covered them so thickly he could barely see the glow of their fur. One of them, the smallest with silver coloring, collapsed against the door. The others tried to pull it up with their mouths, but they were too weak. Taeyang thought about Daewon Park, his old commander, the man who had taught him everything about being a soldier. Daewon used to say, "Strength is not about how hard you can hit. It is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves." He had failed that lesson once. During the war, under orders, he had done terrible things to innocent people. People who needed protection. That guilt lived in his chest like a second heart, always beating, always reminding him. His finger hovered over the door control. This was stupid. Suicidal, probably. These creatures could tear him apart the moment he opened the door. They could be diseased. They could be anything. But they were dying. Taeyang pressed the button. The door hissed open and frozen air rushed in like a physical blow. The temperature in the room dropped 30 degrees in seconds. The 3 creatures stumbled inside, barely able to walk. Up close, they were even more impressive. The largest stood almost 5 feet tall at the shoulder. Their paws were huge, equipped with retractable claws that scraped against the metal floor. As soon as they were inside, Taeyang slammed the door shut. The outpost groaned as the heating system fought to compensate for the cold. The creatures collapsed on his floor, breathing hard, ice cracking off their fur in sheets. Tae-Yang kept his rifle pointed at them, but they made no aggressive moves. The largest one, the blue female, just looked at him. Her eyes were golden and deep and full of something that looked like gratitude. He lowered his rifle slowly. "What are you?" he whispered. The creature did not answer, of course, but she kept looking at him, those golden eyes never blinking. Then she lowered her head to the floor in what could only be a gesture of submission or thanks. Tae-Yang set his rifle aside and grabbed his emergency medical kit. He did not know if these creatures had the same biology as anything he understood, but cold was cold. Hypothermia killed most living things the same way. He dragged them one by one to his workshop where the heating panels were strongest, wrapped them in thermal blankets designed for humans, used his portable scanner to check their vital signs. The readings were strange but showed they were alive. Hearts beating, lungs working, body temperature slowly rising. As he worked, something beeped on his scanner. An alert. The creatures were emitting some kind of signal. Weak, but definitely there. Tae-Yang adjusted the scanner settings, trying to isolate the frequency. His blood went cold. The signal was a distress call, transmitted in an old military code. Not just any code. It was the specific code his unit had used during the war, the Ghost Squadron. A unit that had been completely wiped out 7 years ago. A unit where every single member was supposed to be dead. Tae-Yang looked at the 3 sleeping creatures, now breathing more easily under the thermal blankets. The blue one opened one golden eye and looked at him again. Outside, the storm raged on, shaking the walls of the outpost. Inside, the veteran and 3 impossible creatures waited for morning, and Tae-Yang knew with absolute certainty that his quiet life of isolation was over. Morning came slowly to Helios 7. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind an eerie silence and a landscape transformed. Tae-Yang had not slept. He had spent the entire night watching the 3 creatures, his rifle within reach but no longer pointing at them. The blue female woke first. She lifted her massive head and looked around the workshop with careful attention. Her bioluminescent fur had dried overnight, and now it glowed softly in the dim light. The color reminded Tae-Yang of the sky back on Earth, something he had not seen in years. He decided to call her Hanul Sky. She stood slowly, testing her legs. Ice had damaged her paws badly. Tae-Yang could see the raw, bleeding skin between her pads. She limped over to where the other 2 still slept and nuzzled them gently. The purple male woke next, instantly alert and defensive. He positioned himself between Hanul and Tae-Yang, growling low in his chest. "Easy," Tae-Yang said softly, raising his hands. "I am not going to hurt you." The purple wolf, Bora he decided to name him, did not look convinced. But Hanul made a soft sound, almost like a bark but more musical. Bora relaxed slightly, though his eyes never left Tae-Yang. The smallest one, the silver female, was the last to wake. She was clearly the youngest, maybe not fully grown. Her silver fur sparkled like starlight. Unbi, he thought. Silver rain. She looked around with wide, curious eyes that held no fear at all. When she saw Tae-Yang, she actually wagged her tail. "Well," Tae-Yang said to himself, "at least one of you likes me." He prepared food, not knowing what they ate. He had ration bars, dried meat, and some vegetables from the hydroponics bay. He set out all of it on the floor. The 3 wolves approached carefully. Hanul sniffed each item, then pushed the dried meat toward Bora and Eunbi. They ate hungrily while she waited, only taking food after the others had their fill. "You are the leader," Tae-Yang observed. "You feed your pack first." Hanul looked at him as if she understood every word. That was when Tae-Yang started to realize these were not just smart animals. These were something more. Over the next few days, the evidence piled up. Eunbi learned to open doors by watching Tae-Yang once. Bora figured out how to turn on the water dispenser after seeing it operate a single time. Hanul actually solved a puzzle lock that Tae-Yang used to secure his tool cabinet. She studied it for 10 minutes, then pressed the buttons in the correct sequence. "That is impossible," Tae-Yang muttered, watching through the security camera. That should be impossible. But more than their intelligence, it was their understanding that shocked him. When he spoke to them in Korean, they responded. Not with words, but with clear comprehension. If he said stay, they stayed. If he said come, they came. If he said be careful, that is hot, they would avoid the object. On the 3rd day, Tae-Yang started investigating the signal his scanner had detected. He worked at his computer terminal while the three wolves rested nearby. The distress code bothered him deeply. The Ghost Squadron code should not exist anymore. Everyone who knew it was dead. Everyone except him. He pulled up old military records using access codes that technically he should not still have. The files on the Ghost Squadron were heavily classified. Most of the information was redacted, black bars covering text. But he found something. A reference to a project called Guardian Protocol. The files mentioned Helios 7. They mentioned bioengineering. They mentioned his commander, Daewon Park. Tae-young's hands shook as he read. Daewon had been alive after the war. He had come here to this frozen planet, working on something secret. Something involving created life forms designed to protect something valuable. A soft pressure on his leg made him jump. Yoonbi had placed her head on his knee, looking up at him with concerned eyes. She could sense his distress. "It is okay," he told her, running his hand through her soft fur. "I am just confused." She made a small sound, almost like a question. Tae-young smiled despite himself. "You want to know what I found? I found out you are not natural. Someone made you, but why? And for what purpose?" Hanel padded over to them. She sat down in front of Tae-young and stared at him intensely. Then she did something that made his heart stop. She lifted her paw and placed it over her own chest, right where her heart would be. Then she pointed the paw at Tae-young's chest. Then at Yoonbi, then at Bora. "Same," Tae-young whispered. "You are saying we are the same. We all have hearts." Hanel's tail wagged once. Tae-young felt something crack inside his chest. These creatures, these created beings, they understood. They knew they were different. They knew they were made, not born. But they still had feelings. They still had fear and hope and gratitude. "I need to find out more," he told them. "There is something in your neck, Hanel. A small device. I saw it on my scanner. It might have information." Hanel tilted her head, considering. Then she lay down on her side, exposing her neck. Trusting him completely. The extraction took an hour. Tae-young worked carefully with surgical tools while Bora and Yoonbi watched anxiously. The implant was small, no bigger than a grain of rice, but it was complex. Advanced technology far beyond standard colonial equipment. When he finally pulled it free, Hanel barely flinched. Tae-young cleaned the wound and sealed it with medical gel. Then he connected the implant to his computer. A hologram flickered to life above his desk. It was Daewon Park, but older. Much older. His face was lined with age and worry. His hair had gone completely white. "If you are seeing this," the hologram said, "then you have found the Guardians, and that means I am probably dead." Tae-young sat down heavily. His commander's voice brought back a flood of memories. Training exercises. Combat missions. The final battle where everything went wrong. "I know you have questions," Daewon continued. "I will try to explain. 30 years ago we found something on Helios 7, an archive, an alien library containing genetic information for thousands of extinct species. The potential for scientific advancement was infinite. But the information was also dangerous. In the wrong hands, it could be used to create bioweapons, plagues, monsters." The hologram paused, and Daewon looked directly at the camera. "So we created Guardians to protect it. We designed them to be intelligent, long-lived, and loyal. We gave them the ability to survive in the harshest conditions. We made them perfect protectors." Hanel made a soft sound. She was watching the hologram of the man who had created her. "But the government wanted to weaponize them," Daewon said, his voice turning bitter. "They wanted to turn our Guardians into soldiers, into killers. I refused. The other scientists refused. So they shut down the project and ordered us eliminated." Tae-young felt cold. This was exactly like what had happened to him during the war. Good people trying to do the right thing, destroyed by people in power who wanted weapons. "I hid the Guardians," Daewon continued, "gave them a chance to live free. If you found them, it means they need help. Please, whoever you are, protect them. They deserve to live. They deserve to choose their own path." The hologram flickered and died. Tae-young sat in silence for a long moment. The three wolves gathered around him, pressing close. Finally he spoke. "He gave you a choice, to stay or leave, to protect the archive or run away to safety. But you stayed, didn't you? Even after he was gone. You stayed and kept protecting it." Hanul lowered her head in acknowledgement. "That was very brave," Tae-young said quietly. "Or very foolish. I have not decided which yet." His computer suddenly beeped. Motion sensors. Ships entering orbit. Large ones. Taeyang pulled up the scanner display and felt his stomach drop. 3 military-grade transport vessels. Not colonial ships. Private corporate vessels. And they were scanning the surface looking for something. Looking for the wolves. "We have a problem," Taeyang said, standing up quickly. "A very big problem." Taeyang worked fast. The ships in orbit were not friendly. That much was clear. They were using military-grade scanners, the kind designed to find hidden bases and bunkers. If they were scanning this thoroughly, they knew something was here. They knew about the Guardians. He pulled up all the information he could access about the vessels. The identification codes showed they belonged to Haitian Industries, a massive corporation that specialized in biotechnology and weapons development. Exactly the kind of people who would want to capture intelligent bioengineered creatures. "This is bad," Taeyang muttered, scrolling through data. "This is very bad." The 3 wolves sensed his tension. Hanel stood close to him, watching the screen. Bora paced near the door, growling softly. Yunbi pressed against Taeyang's leg, trembling slightly. The ships began launching smaller craft. Landing shuttles. Taeyang counted 12 of them, spreading out across the glacier. One was heading directly toward his outpost. Estimated arrival time was 4 hours. He needed to know more about what these people wanted. Using old military tricks, Taeyang hacked into the corporate communication channels. It took him 20 minutes to break their encryption. When he finally heard the voices, what they said made his blood run cold. Team 3, maintain search pattern. Remember, the targets are valuable alive. Director Bay wants them intact for study. Copy that. What about any humans who might be harboring them? There was a pause. Then a cold professional voice responded. Eliminate all witnesses. No exceptions. Taeyang closed his eyes. They were going to kill him. More importantly, they were going to capture the wolves and use them for experiments. He had seen what corporations did with valuable biological assets. He had seen the labs during the war. The cages, the suffering. Not this time, he thought. Not again. He stood and went to the storage room at the back of the outpost. He had not opened this room in 3 years. Inside were his old military gear. Combat armor, weapons, equipment he had sworn never to use again. He looked at it all and felt tired. "I am getting too old for this," he said to himself. But he began pulling on the armor anyway. Hanul followed him into the storage room. She watched as he equipped himself with weapons and ammunition. When he strapped a combat knife to his leg, she made a questioning sound. "They are coming to hurt you," Taeyang explained, checking the charge on a plasma rifle. "I'm not going to let that happen. I made a promise to myself after the war. No more innocents die because I did nothing. No more." He sat down on an equipment crate and looked at the 3 wolves. "I need to understand something. The archive that you protect. Where is it? If these people find it, they will take everything. The genetic information, the technology, all of it." Hanul moved to the computer terminal. She pawed at the keyboard, and to Taeyang's shock, she began pressing keys. Slowly and carefully, she typed coordinates into the system, numbers that showed a location 15 kilometers away, deep under the glacier. "You can read," Taeyang said in amazement. "You can actually read and write." Hanul looked at him with those intelligent golden eyes. Of course she could. She had been created to be intelligent, to be a guardian. Someone had taught her everything she would need to know. Taeyang pulled up a map of the area using the coordinates. The location was in a massive ice cave system. According to his geological scans, there was a huge artificial structure down there, metal and crystal, buried under thousands of tons of ice. "The archive, how many of you are there?" he asked. "How many guardians?" Hanul pawed at the keyboard again. The number she typed made Taeyang's eyes widen. 34. "There are 34 of you protecting that archive? Then why did only 3 of you come to my door during the storm?" Hanul's ears drooped. Umbi made a sad sound. Bora looked away. Taeyang realized they were showing grief. "Some of you died," he said softly. "The cold." "The hunters. You have been alone out here for years, and some of you died." Hanul nodded her massive head. Taeyang felt anger building in his chest. These creatures had been created and then abandoned, left to survive on a frozen planet with no support, no help, and now someone wanted to capture them and use them as tools again. "Where are the others?" he asked. "The rest of your pack?" Hanul typed more coordinates. Multiple locations, scattered across the glacier. They had spread out to make it harder for hunters to find them all at once. "Smart tactics, can you call them?" Warn them that hunters are coming? Hanul stood very still. Then she threw back her head and howled. The sound was not like any wolf howl Tae-Yang had ever heard. It was deeper, more complex. It had layers to it, like music. The howl went on for almost a minute, rising and falling in patterns. When she finished, Bora and Onbi added their own howls. The sound was beautiful and sad at the same time. Tae-Yang felt something in his chest tighten. They will hear that? He asked. Even from this distance? Hanul nodded. The Guardians could communicate across vast distances using their howls. They had probably been doing it for years, keeping in contact, warning each other of dangers. Tae-Yang turned back to his computer. He had 4 hours before the mercenaries arrived. He needed to prepare defenses. He needed a plan. But more than that, he needed information about what these people were really after. He dug deeper into the files he had stolen from Daewon's implant. There were detailed records about the Guardian Protocol, notes from the scientists who had created the wolves. Tae-Yang read through everything, learning about the months of work that had gone into designing the perfect protector. The wolves had been engineered with incredible abilities. They could survive temperatures that would kill almost any other living thing. They could go weeks without food. Their claws could cut through metal, and their intelligence was far beyond any natural animal. Some of the scientists had noted that the Guardians showed creativity, problem-solving, and even what looked like emotions. One note from a scientist named Dr. Yuna Choi caught his attention. She had written, "Today Hanul brought me flowers. Ice flowers from the deep caves. She had no reason to do this. No programming that would make her do this. She did it because she wanted to. Because she understood that I was sad and she wanted to help. We did not just create Guardians. We created people." Tae-Yang looked at Hanul, who was watching him read. "Dr. Yuna Choi, you remember her?" Hanul's whole body language changed. Her tail wagged. She made happy sounds. She had loved Dr. Yuna. "She understood what you were," Tae-Yang said. "She saw you as people, not as tools. I wish she were here now. She would know what to do." But Dr. Yuna was gone along with all the other scientists. According to the files, they had been killed 30 years ago when the project was shut down. Only Daewon had escaped, and he had used his last years to hide the Guardians and give them a chance at freedom. The communication channels crackled again. Tae-Yang listened as the mercenary teams coordinated their approach. They were professional and organized. This was not their first hunt. One voice stood out, a man who spoke with cold authority. "This is Director Kyung-Soo Bae. All teams, remember your objectives. The Guardian specimens are worth millions each to the right buyers. We need them alive and intact. Use tranquilizer rounds only. Anyone who damages the merchandise will answer to me personally." So that was it. They wanted to sell the wolves to the highest bidder. Probably to weapons manufacturers or research facilities that did not care about ethics. Tae-Yang felt that old familiar rage building. The same rage he had felt during the war when he saw innocents being hurt by people who only cared about profit and power. But this time he had a choice. This time he could do the right thing from the beginning. He went back to the storage room and pulled out more equipment. Motion sensors, proximity mines, camouflage netting, everything he would need to turn the area around his outpost into a killing zone. He was one man against 12 trained mercenaries, but he had advantages. He knew the terrain. He knew how to fight in extreme cold. And he had 3 intelligent allies who were designed to be perfect guardians. "Hanul," he said, loading ammunition into magazines. "I am going to teach you and your pack how to fight back. Not to attack, but to defend. Can you learn quickly?" Hanul's golden eyes locked onto his. Then she lowered her head in agreement. "Good," Tae-Yang said, "because we have about 3 hours before they arrive. And when they get here, we are going to show them exactly what happens when you threaten a Guardian's territory." Outside, the wind began to pick up again. Another storm was coming. Tae-Yang smiled grimly. The weather might be the best ally of all. The mercenaries landed 2 hours after Tae-Yang finished his preparations. He watched them through his long-range scope from a hidden position 300 meters from the outpost. 12 soldiers in full combat armor moving in tight formation, professional, disciplined, dangerous. He recognized the tactics immediately. Standard corporate security pattern. They split into 3 teams of 4. One team would approach the outpost directly. The other 2 would circle around to cut off any escape routes. Textbook strategy. But Taeyang had learned to fight from Daewon Park, and Daewon had never believed in textbook strategies. He had taught Taeyang that the best defense was making your enemy think they understood the situation, then proving them completely wrong. The wolves lay beside him in the snow, nearly invisible. Their bioluminescent fur had dimmed to almost nothing, a trick Taeyang had discovered they could control. Hanel had explained it through gestures. When they wanted to hide, their glow faded. When they wanted to communicate or intimidate, it brightened. Just one more example of how sophisticated they really were. Through his earpiece, Taeyang listened to the mercenary communications. They were using encrypted channels, but his old military gear could crack most commercial encryption easily enough. Team 1 approaching primary structure. No signs of life. Thermal scans show inactive heating systems. Taeyang smiled. He had shut down most of the outpost systems and set up false thermal signatures in 3 different locations. Let them chase ghosts for a while. Team 2 moving to secondary position. We have tracks in the snow. Multiple large animals. The targets are definitely in the area. The tracks were real. Taeyang had asked Bora to run a specific pattern around the area, leading away from their actual position. Bora had understood immediately. The wolves learned frighteningly fast. Team 3 in position on the ridge. We have overwatch. No movement detected. That was the team Taeyang was most concerned about. Overwatch meant snipers. They would be watching for any attempt to flee. He would have to deal with them first. He tapped Hanel gently and pointed to the ridge where Team 3 had set up. She looked, then nodded. She understood. She moved away silently, a blue shadow against white snow. Yunbi followed her. They would circle around behind the sniper team. Taeyang had spent 2 hours teaching the wolves basic tactical signals. Use the terrain for cover. Approach from downwind so they could not smell you. Stay low, move slow. The wolves had absorbed it all like they had been training for years. Maybe they had been. Maybe surviving alone on this planet for decades had taught them more about hunting and hiding than any military training ever could. Team 1 were at the entrance. Door is locked. Preparing to breach. Taeyang had left the door locked but removed the locking mechanism's internal components. When they tried to breach it, they were in for a surprise. He heard the explosion even from 300 meters away. Not a large explosion, just enough to trigger the proximity mine he had placed above the door. Shouts of confusion came through his earpiece. One man screaming about his helmet being damaged. Team 1 taking fire. Repeat, taking fire! Unknown hostiles. Team 1 clarify. How many hostiles? I don't know. There was an explosion. Jenkins is down. Helmet breach. He's alive but out of the fight. Taeyang moved quickly to his next position. He had set up 5 different firing locations, all with clear sight lines and easy retreat paths. The trick to fighting when outnumbered was never staying in one place. Through his scope, he saw Team 2 rushing toward the outpost to support Team 1. They moved across open ground, confident in their armor and weapons. Taeyang waited until they were directly over the section of snow he had marked with a small flag. He pressed a button on his detonator. The ice beneath Team 2's feet collapsed. Taeyang had spent hours carefully drilling down and creating a weak point in the glacier's surface. The 4 soldiers fell 6 meters into a crevasse. Their shouting filled the communication channel. Man down. Multiple men down. We're in some kind of pit. Can you climb out? Negative. The walls are pure ice. We need climbing gear. Taeyang had just removed 8 of the 12 mercenaries from the fight without firing a single shot. Now for the hard part. Team 3 on the ridge would have seen everything. They would be scanning for him now, looking for any heat signature, any movement. Professional snipers were patient. They would wait for him to make a mistake, but they were not watching for wolves. Hanul and Yunbi had reached the ridge. Taeyang could not see them, but he knew they were there. He had told them to wait for his signal. He needed the snipers distracted. He stood up from his hiding position and ran across open ground toward a cluster of ice formations. Immediately, shots rang out. Plasma bolts superheated the air around him. He dove behind cover as the ice beside him exploded into steam. Target acquired. Single male, armed, engaging. The snipers were focused on him now, perfect. Taeyang keyed his radio to a specific frequency, 1 long pulse. The signal. The sniper's communication suddenly filled with screams. What the? Behind us! Something's behind us. Through his scope, Taeyang saw Hanul emerge onto the ridge like a glowing blue nightmare. Her fur blazed with bioluminescent light, making her look twice her actual size. Yunbi flanked from the other side, silver light pulsing in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The snipers panicked. They were trained to fight humans, not creatures out of legend. They fired wildly, but Hanul was already moving. She hit the first sniper like a truck, her weight and momentum sending him tumbling down the ridge. His armor protected him from serious injury, but he was out of the fight. Yunbi went for their equipment. She grabbed the rifle of the second sniper in her jaws and crushed it. The metal screamed as it bent. The sniper scrambled backward, reaching for a sidearm. Hanel stepped over him and growled. Just one deep rumbling sound. The man froze. Team 3 is compromised. The targets are here. They're intelligent. They're coordinating. Taeyang heard real fear in the mercenary's voice. Good. Fear made people careless, but now he heard something else. A new voice on the communication channel. Older, colder, speaking from orbit. This is Director Kyung-Soo Bae. All teams fall back to your shuttles. Tranquilizers are no longer authorized. Use lethal force on the animals. And find that human. I want him alive for questioning. The situation had just changed. They were no longer trying to capture the wolves gently. Now they wanted them dead and Taeyang taken prisoner. He whistled sharply. The wolves heard it and immediately retreated from the ridge, racing back toward his position. They ran with incredible speed, covering ground that would take a human 10 minutes in less than 60 seconds. Bora emerged from where he had been hiding on the opposite side of the outpost. He had circled around during the chaos and used his claws to disable the mercenaries' shuttle. Fuel was leaking into the snow. They were not leaving that way. Hanul, Bora, Umbi, Taeyang called. Time to go. We cannot fight them all. But as he said it, he saw more shuttles descending from orbit. 6 of them. And these ones were different, larger, heavily armed. All units, this is Director Bae. I am deploying combat drones. The human and the animals are to be eliminated. This mission is now a cleanup operation. Taeyang's stomach dropped. Combat drones were autonomous weapons. Fast, accurate, and absolutely ruthless. 1 man and 3 wolves could not fight machines. He looked at Hanul. She looked back at him. In her golden eyes, he saw the same thing he felt. They were going to die here, but at least they would die fighting. Then Hanul did something unexpected. She threw back her head and howled. Not the communication howl from before. This was different. This was a call, a cry for help. The howl echoed across the glacier. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ice itself seemed to come alive. Dozens of glowing shapes emerged from caves and crevasses all around them. Blue, purple, silver, green, gold. Wolves of every color, all with bioluminescent fur blazing in the Arctic twilight. The other guardians, all 31 of them. They had heard Hanul's call and they had come. Taeyang stared in awe. He had known there were more guardians, but seeing them all together was breathtaking. They moved as one unit, spreading out in a tactical formation that would have made any military commander proud. At their head was a massive white wolf with golden highlights. He was old, Taeyang could tell. Gray around his muzzle, scars on his flanks, but his eyes burned with fierce intelligence and determination. The old wolf walked up to Taeyang and stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded his head slightly. Acknowledgement, respect, you saved 3 of mine. Now we save you. The combat drones descended from the sky like mechanical vultures. The battle was about to begin in earnest. The combat drones opened fire first. Plasma bolts rained down from the sky, turning snow into steam and ice into water. The Guardians scattered immediately, their pack formation breaking into smaller tactical units. They had done this before, Taeyang realized. They had been hunted before and learned how to survive. The old white wolf stayed beside Taeyang. Up close, he was even more impressive. Larger than Hanul, with muscles that spoke of a lifetime of surviving in the harshest conditions. His fur glowed with white and gold light that pulsed in steady rhythms. Taeyang decided to call him Dalnim. Moonlight, Dalnim barked once, sharp and commanding. 5 wolves immediately peeled off and charged toward the remaining mercenaries who were trying to regroup near their damaged shuttles. The mercenaries opened fire, but the wolves moved with impossible speed and coordination. They did not attack the humans directly. Instead, they targeted equipment. 1 wolf grabbed a rifle in her jaws and crushed it. Another slashed at a communication pack, severing the antenna. A 3rd wolf simply slammed into a mercenary with her shoulder, sending him sprawling into the snow where his heavy armor made it nearly impossible to stand up quickly. The combat drones adjusted their targeting. 4 of them focused on the wolves attacking the mercenaries. The other 6 turned toward Taeyang's position. "Down!" Taeyang shouted, though he knew the wolves probably did not understand English. But Dalnim understood the tone. He pushed Taeyang flat with one massive paw just as plasma bolts screamed overhead. Taeyang rolled, bringing up his rifle. He fired at the nearest drone, hitting it square in the main sensor array. The machine spun wildly and crashed into the ice, but 5 more were already circling, looking for a clear shot. That was when he saw what the Guardians could really do. Hanul stood in the center of a cluster of 4 wolves. They formed a tight circle, touching each other with their flanks. Their bioluminescent fur began to glow brighter and brighter, pulsing in synchronized patterns. The air around them started to shimmer. "What are they doing?" Taeyang muttered. The answer came a second later. A visible wave of energy burst out from the circle of wolves. Electromagnetic pulse. Taeyang felt it pass through him like a wave of pressure. His rifle's targeting system went dead. His armor's power assist stopped working, and all 6 combat drones simply fell out of the sky, their electronic systems completely fried. "Impossible," Taeyang breathed. "They can generate EMP?" Dalnim made a sound that incredibly sounded like agreement. Of course they could. They had been engineered to protect an archive containing advanced alien technology. They needed to be able to defend against electronic threats, but the effort had clearly cost them. The 4 wolves who had generated the pulse were breathing hard, their glow dimming. It took enormous energy to do that. More drones were descending from the orbital ships, at least 20 of them. The Guardians could not keep using EMP bursts without exhausting themselves completely. Taeyang grabbed his radio and switched to the corporate communication channel. "Director Bay, this is Taeyang Kim. Call off your attack." There was a pause. Then that cold voice responded. "Mr. Kim, so you are the one harboring our property. I should thank you for gathering all the specimens in one location. It makes our job much easier." "These are not specimens," Taeyang said through gritted teeth. "They are sentient beings. They have intelligence, emotions, and the right to exist freely. They are bioengineered assets created with corporate funding," Bay replied. "They belong to whoever can afford to buy them. And I have several buyers who will pay extremely well for creatures that can generate electromagnetic pulses. Over my dead body. That can be arranged. Mr. Kim, surrender now and I will make your death quick." Taeyang cut the communication. Around him, the Guardians were regrouping. Several were injured. He saw one wolf limping badly, plasma burns on her flank. Another had blood on his muzzle from biting through armored gloves. They were brave, but they could not win against this many drones and armed soldiers. He needed a plan. Something unexpected. Something that would change the entire situation. His mind raced through options. Then he remembered the data from Daewon's implant. The archive. It was 15 kilometers away, deep under the glacier. If he could reach it, maybe there was something there that could help. Advanced technology, weapons, information that could expose what Haitian Industries was really doing. But leaving now meant abandoning the wolves to fight alone. And he had sworn he would never abandon people who needed him again. Dalnim nudged his arm with his nose. The old wolf looked at him with eyes that had seen decades of hardship. Then Dalnim turned and barked to the pack. Immediately 10 wolves broke off and formed a defensive line between Taeyang and the incoming drones. The message was clear. "Go, we will hold them here." "Do what needs to be done, I cannot leave you," Taeyang protested. But Hanul was already there, pushing at him with her head, forcing him to move. Yunbi grabbed his coat sleeve in her teeth and pulled. Even Bora, who had been suspicious of him from the start, positioned himself to guide Taeyang toward the ice caves that led to the archive. They were giving him a chance. "The only chance they might have. I will come back," Taeyang promised. "I will not leave you to fight alone." Dalnim nodded once. Then he turned to face the descending drones, his white and gold fur blazing like a beacon. The other Guardians stood with him, a wall of bioluminescent defiance against the corporate machines. Taeyang ran. Hanul, Bora, and Yunbi ran with him. Behind them he heard the sounds of battle resume. Plasma fire, howls of pain and rage, the crash of drones hitting ice. His heart screamed at him to turn back to fight beside them. But his head knew they were right. This was the only way. The entrance to the cave system was a crack in the glacier barely wide enough for a human. Taeyang squeezed through, the wolves following. Inside, the ice glowed with reflected bioluminescence from the wolves' fur. They moved through tunnels that twisted and descended deep into the glacier. "You know the way," Taeyang said to Hanul. "You have been here before," she confirmed with a soft bark. They ran through passages that opened into vast caverns filled with ice formations like frozen waterfalls. They crossed crevasses on narrow ice bridges. They descended stairs that someone, maybe the original scientists, had carved into the glacier decades ago. After 30 minutes of running, they emerged into a chamber so large Taeyang could not see the ceiling. And there in the center was the archive. It was beautiful, a structure of crystal and metal that seemed to grow out of the ice itself. It pulsed with soft blue light, creating patterns that looked almost like writing, alien writing. Thousands of data crystals arranged in complex geometric patterns, each one containing genetic information for species that had died long ago. "This is what you have been protecting," Taeyang whispered. "This is what they want to steal." He approached the archive carefully. There had to be a control system, a way to access the information. As he got closer, the crystals began to glow brighter, responding to his presence. A holographic interface materialized in front of him. Text scrolled past in multiple languages, finally settling on Korean. DNA pattern recognized. Human. Access level. Visitor. "Query? I need help," Taeyang said to the machine. "There are people trying to destroy the Guardians, trying to steal this archive. Can you help me stop them?" Guardians are primary defensive system. Archive defense protocols can be activated. Warning. This will broadcast location to all galactic authorities and scientific networks. Archive will become public knowledge, Taeyang understood. If he activated the defense protocols, the secret would be out. The galaxy would know about this place. There would be no hiding it anymore. But it would also mean legal protection. Public oversight. The Guardians would no longer be hidden property that corporations could hunt. "Do it," Taeyang commanded. "Activate all defense protocols. Broadcast everything." Confirmed. Broadcasting on all frequencies. Estimated time until authorities arrive. 4 hours. Activating defensive measures. The entire chamber began to glow. Energy flowed through crystalline patterns in the walls. And outside on the surface, Taeyang knew something was happening. Through his radio, which had somehow reconnected, he heard chaos on the corporate channels. "Director Bay, we are being scanned by multiple vessels. Naval ships, science vessels, even media drones. Someone is broadcasting our location and our operations. Impossible. Cut the transmission." "We cannot, sir. The signal is too strong. It is coming from the archive itself. Everyone within 10 light years can see what we are doing here." Taeyang smiled grimly. The archive had just made their private war very public. But then the ground shook. A massive explosion somewhere above them. Director Bay's voice came through, filled with rage. "If I cannot have the archive, no one will. All ships fire orbital bombardment. Destroy everything." Taeyang's blood went cold. Bay was going to destroy the entire glacier. The archive, the Guardians, everything. He looked at Hanul. "Can you stop orbital weapons?" She looked back at him. Then she howled. Not a call for help this time, a call to action. All across the glacier, every Guardian stopped fighting. They ran, all of them converging on the archive chamber. They poured in through tunnels and crevasses. Dozens of glowing forms filling the space. They positioned themselves in a circle around the crystal structure. Dalnim was the last to arrive. The shield held, but barely. Taeyang felt the energy flowing through him like fire in his veins. The fusion reactor was tearing itself apart, channeling more power than it was ever designed to handle. Through the transparent ceiling of the outpost, he could see the dome of electromagnetic energy above the glacier, deflecting the orbital strikes into harmless streams of dissipating plasma. But the reactor was dying. And so was the outpost. Alarms screamed all around him. Structural warnings, radiation warnings, critical failure warnings. When the reactor finally gave out, the temperature inside would drop to lethal levels within minutes. The bombardment stopped. Either Director Bay had run out of weapons, or he realized he was wasting ammunition against a shield he could not break. Taeyang carefully disconnected from the power node, his hands shaking from the energy that had just flowed through his body. The reactor made a grinding sound and went dark. The lights flickered and died. Emergency systems kicked in, but they would only last an hour or two. He stumbled outside. His body felt like he had been hit by a truck. Burns on his hands where he had gripped the power node. His armor was scorched and smoking. But he was alive. A howl echoed across the ice. Hanel and the others were calling to him. He made his way back down into the cave system, following the glowing trail of bioluminescent lichen that the wolves had deliberately left to guide him. The guardians were exhausted. Several had collapsed completely, their fur dim and their breathing labored. Creating that shield had taken everything they had. But the archive still stood, undamaged, its crystals pulsing with steady light. Dalnim approached Tai Yang slowly, limping badly. The old wolf had multiple burns across his body, and one of his eyes was swollen shut. But he touched his nose to Tai Yang's hand gently. "Thank you." "We are not safe yet," Tai Yang said, checking his radio. "The galactic authorities are coming, but they are still hours away. Director Bay might try something else." As if summoned by his words, a voice crackled over the emergency channel. "This is Captain Jiwan Sung to any survivors. I am requesting immediate medical assistance. Multiple injured. We are not hostile. Repeat, we are not hostile." Tai Yang tensed. It could be a trap. But the voice sounded genuine, tired and scared and human in a way that combat soldiers rarely allowed themselves to sound. "This is Tai Yang Kim," he responded. "What is your situation, Captain?" "My situation is that I just watched Director Bay try to murder everyone on this glacier, including his own people. 3 of my team are trapped in a crevasse. 1 has a broken leg. We need help getting out before we freeze to death." Tai Yang looked at Hanul. She tilted her head, considering. Then she made a decision. She barked to 3 of the younger guardians. They immediately headed up toward the surface. "Help is coming," Tai Yang told the captain. "But understand this. If you make any aggressive moves toward the guardians, they will defend themselves. These are intelligent beings, not animals to be hunted." "I understand," Captain Jiwan said quietly. "I have seen what they can do, and I have seen that they only attacked when we attacked first. That changes things. That changes a lot of things." 30 minutes later, Captain Jiwan and her 3 team members were brought down to the archive chamber. The wolves had pulled them out of the crevasse and guided them through the tunnels. The mercenaries looked terrified but also awed. They stared at the archive with wide eyes. Captain Jiwan was younger than Tai Yang expected, maybe 30 years old. She had short black hair and a scar across her cheek. Her armor was damaged and she held her left arm carefully. Broken collarbone, Tai Yang guessed. With her were 2 others. Mirai, a medic with kind eyes and gentle hands, and Hojin, an engineer who looked around the chamber with the fascination of someone seeing advanced technology for the first time. "This is what we were fighting over?" Jiwan asked, looking at the archive. "This is what Director Bay wanted so badly?" "This is what the Guardians have been protecting for 30 years, Tai Yang confirmed. An archive of extinct alien species. Knowledge that could save countless lives if used properly, or create terrible weapons if used wrongly. Mirai was already moving among the injured Guardians, her medical training overcoming her fear. She knelt beside a young wolf with burns on his flank and carefully began applying treatment. The wolf watched her warily but allowed it. "How long until we freeze?" Jiwan asked bluntly. "Your outpost is dead. Our shuttles are damaged. The temperature outside is dropping." 6 hours, Hojin said, checking his instruments. "Maybe less. Without heat we will not last the night." They were trapped. All of them. Humans and Guardians together, deep under the glacier with no power and no way to call for help that would arrive in time. Tai Yang sat down heavily on the ice floor. He was so tired. The energy transfer from the reactor had drained him in ways he did not fully understand. His hands shook. His vision blurred occasionally. He might have radiation poisoning, or nerve damage, or both. Yunbi came and laid down beside him, pressing her warm body against his side. She was cold too, her bioluminescence flickering weakly, but she was trying to share what little warmth she had. "We should tell stories," Mirai said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. She shrugged. "My grandmother used to say that stories keep you warm when nothing else can. They remind you why you want to survive." "Stories," Jiwan repeated, then surprised everyone by laughing bitterly. "You want to hear a story? I will tell you one. I had a brother named Youngwoo. He was a civilian caught in the war. Wrong place, wrong time. A military unit thought his colony was hiding insurgents. They were ordered to clear the area. No survivors. Youngwoo was 16 years old. The chamber was silent. Taiyang felt something cold in his chest that had nothing to do with the temperature. I became a mercenary because at least then I knew who the enemy was, Jiwon continued, or so I thought. But today I realized I have become exactly like the people who killed my brother. Following orders without questioning, hurting innocents for money. The Guardians never attacked us first. They only defended themselves, and I was ready to capture them and sell them to the highest bidder. I know something about following bad orders, Taeyang said quietly. During the war, I was part of a unit that cleared civilian colonies. We were told they were insurgent bases. We followed orders, and then we found out they were just families trying to survive. Families like your brother was part of. Jiwon looked at him, really looked at him. You carry that guilt every day. Every single day, Taeyang confirmed. It is why I came to this frozen planet. Why I chose to live alone. I did not trust myself around people anymore. But then 3 wolves showed up at my door begging for help. And I had a choice. Follow protocol and let them die, or break every rule and save them. You chose to save them, Mireille said softly. I chose to be better than I was during the war. Taeyang corrected. They gave me a second chance to do the right thing. Hojin spoke up, surprising everyone. He had been quiet until now. I was an engineer for a weapons manufacturer. I designed targeting systems that made missiles more accurate. I was proud of my work. I thought I was keeping people safe. Then I saw footage of what my missiles did to a civilian hospital that had been misidentified as a military base. 73 people died. 12 of them were children. I quit the next day and became a mercenary because I thought at least mercenaries did not lie about what they were. They sat in silence for a while, sharing the weight of their past mistakes. Around them the Guardians rested quietly. Dalnim watched the humans with his one good eye as if understanding more than they realized. The Guardians are not innocent either, Taeyang said. I saw the files. When the original scientists were killed, the Guardians fought back. They killed some of the soldiers who were sent to eliminate them. That is how Dalnim got those scars. That is why some of the pack did not survive. Hanul lifted her head and made a low sound. Not quite a growl. More like acknowledgement. Yes, we have blood on our paws too. But they did not have a choice, Jiwon said. They were defending themselves. That is different from following orders to hurt innocents. Is it? Taeyang asked. Or are we all just trying to survive in a universe that keeps forcing us to make impossible choices? The temperature kept dropping. Hojin tried to rig some kind of heating system from their damaged armor, but it was not enough. Mireille shared what medical supplies she had, treating both humans and Guardians, but they all knew the truth. Without rescue, they would not last until morning. Yunbi's breathing had become shallow. She was the youngest Guardian, the most vulnerable to the cold. Taeyang took off his jacket and wrapped it around her. Jiwon saw him shivering and removed her own thermal underlayer, draping it over his shoulders. You will freeze, Taeyang protested. So will you, Jiwon replied. At least this way we freeze together while keeping the young one warm. Strength is protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Someone taught me that once. Taeyang smiled despite the cold. Someone taught me the same thing. Bora brought pieces of their damaged equipment and piled it around Yunbi, creating a small windbreak. Hanul curled around the young wolf from the other side. The other Guardians formed a circle around all of them, humans and wolves together. Sharing White Dawn came to Helios 7 with brilliant light reflecting off endless ice. The rescue ships arrived exactly 4 hours after the archive had begun its broadcast. Naval vessels from the Galactic Authority, science ships from 3 different research institutions, even media drones capturing everything for the networks that spanned dozens of star systems. Taeyang woke to the sound of voices and the blessed warmth of portable heaters being set up around them. Medical teams moved among the survivors, treating injuries and hypothermia. He was disoriented at first, unsure if he was dreaming, but then he felt Yunbi's steady breathing beside him and knew they had survived. You are lucky to be alive, a medic told him as she checked his vital signs. Another hour and hypothermia would have taken you all. Not luck, Taeyang said, looking at the Guardians who were being carefully examined by xenobiologists. Stubbornness. And good company. Captain Jiwon was already up, talking to naval officers. Taeyang heard her giving testimony about Director Bei's actions. Attempted murder, illegal weapons deployment, corporate espionage. The list of charges was long. Other mercenaries from the operation were being arrested on their ships. Director Kyung-soo Bae himself was brought down in restraints. He looked at Tae-yang with pure hatred. You have ruined everything. That archive was worth billions. Those creatures were worth billions. Those creatures have names, Tae-yang said coldly. And they are worth more than all your money combined. They are people. They are property, Bae spat. Bioengineered assets. The courts will side with me. But Tae-yang smiled because he knew something Bae did not. The archive's broadcast had not just revealed the location. It had sent out detailed files about the Guardian Protocol, files that showed the Guardians' intelligence, their emotions, their capacity for choice and sacrifice. The galaxy had watched them create an electromagnetic shield to protect not just themselves, but humans they had every reason to hate. The courts will decide, Tae-yang agreed. But I do not think it will go the way you hope. The trial took 6 months. It became the most watched legal proceeding in galactic history. The question was simple but profound. Could a created being be considered a person with rights, or were they property of whoever funded their creation? A lawyer named Suman Lee took the Guardian's case without charging anything. She was young, brilliant, and passionate about civil rights. She built her argument carefully, bringing in scientists, philosophers, and legal experts from across known space. The turning point came when Hanul herself testified through a neural interface that allowed her thoughts to be translated into words. The courtroom fell silent as she spoke about watching Dr. Yuna Choi die, about choosing to stay and protect the archive even when she could have run to safety, about the other Guardians who had died over the years, and how each loss had hurt like losing family. We were created, her translated voice said. We did not ask to exist, but we do exist. We think, we feel, we choose. Is that not enough to be considered alive? To be considered worthy of freedom? The judge deliberated for 3 days. When he finally announced his decision, it changed everything. This court finds that the Guardians of Helios 7 are a sentient species with full legal rights under the Galactic Sentient Species Act. They cannot be owned, bought, sold, or treated as property. They are free beings with the right to choose their own path. The courtroom erupted. Tae-yang, sitting in the gallery, felt tears on his face. Beside him, Captain Ji-won smiled for the first time since he had met her. Director Bae was sentenced to life imprisonment for attempted genocide, murder of the original scientists, and a dozen other charges. Haitian Industries was fined billions and forced to establish a fund for the support and protection of bioengineered species. But for Tae-yang, the trial was just the beginning. The real question was what came next. He was offered everything: full military honors, a pardon for his actions during the war, money from media networks who wanted his story, universities wanted him to lecture, politicians wanted him for campaigns. Everyone wanted a piece of the man who had saved the Guardians. He turned it all down. Instead, he went back to Helios 7. The galactic authorities had established a permanent research station there, and they needed someone to coordinate between the humans and the Guardians, someone both sides trusted. Tae-yang was the obvious choice. Captain Ji-won went with him. She had left the mercenary life behind and joined the Galactic Authority's defense force, but she requested assignment to Helios 7 specifically. Someone needs to make sure no one tries this again, she said. And I owe the Guardians a debt I can never fully repay. At least I can spend my life trying. Mirai and Hojin came too. Mirai established a medical clinic that served both humans and Guardians. Hojin became chief engineer for the research station, designing new systems that worked in harmony with the Guardians' bioelectric abilities rather than against them. The archive was opened under strict supervision. The Guardians had final say over what could be studied and what should remain sealed. Dalnim, the old white wolf, became the unofficial ambassador for Guardian kind. He was patient with scientists who wanted to study them, but firm about boundaries and respect. Within a year, the first extinct species was successfully brought back using genetic information from the archive. A small bird that had died out 3 million years ago. It sang a song that no living being had heard in eons. Hanul sat and listened to it for hours, her tail wagging gently. Tae-yang built a new outpost, larger than the first. It had rooms for both humans and Guardians, a common area where both species could gather, a workshop where Hojin tinkered with new ideas, a medical bay where Mirai performed miracles, and a quiet room where Tae-yang could read his old book about finding purpose after war. He understood it now. Purpose was not about forgetting the past. It was about using the past to make better choices in the present. 5 years after the trial, something miraculous happened. Hanul had pups, 5 of them, small and squirming and covered in soft fur that already showed hints of bioluminescence. She had mated with Bora, and together they were starting a new generation of guardians. The first guardians born into freedom rather than servitude. Taeyang sat beside the nest watching the pups play. One of them, a little female with blue and silver fur, stumbled over to him and climbed into his lap. She was fearless, curious about everything, just like her mother. "What will you name them?" he asked Hanul. She could not answer in words, but she had learned to use a simple communication device that Hojin had designed. It translated her thoughts into text on a small screen. She typed slowly but deliberately. "The silver one is Yuna, after the doctor who loved us. The others will choose their own names when they are ready." Taeyang felt his throat tighten. Dr. Yuna Choi would be honored. "She taught me that family is not about blood," Hanul typed. "It is about who you choose to protect. You are family now. You and Jiwon and Mirai and Hojin. You are Pak." "I am honored to be Pak," Taeyang said softly. Years passed. The research station grew into a small city. More extinct species were revived and given homes on Helios 7 or other suitable worlds. The Guardians' population slowly increased. By the 10th anniversary of the trial, there were 73 Guardians living free lives across multiple planets. Taeyang grew older. His hair turned gray, then white. His body ached with old injuries and hard years. But he was content in a way he had never been during his military service. He had found his purpose at last. One evening, 20 years after that first blizzard, he sat outside the station watching the sunset. Helios 7 was in a warm season, and the temperature was almost comfortable. Hanel sat beside him, gray now around her muzzle but still strong and alert. Little Yuna, now fully grown with her own pups, brought her daughter to meet the old human who had saved her grandmother so long ago. The pup was named Taeyang in his honor. She had golden fur with blue highlights, and she was already showing signs of the intelligence that marked her kind. "Hello, little one," Taeyang said, scratching behind her ears. "You have a big name to live up to." Young Taeyang wagged her tail and licked his hand. Then she ran off to play with a human child, Isul, the daughter of one of the researchers. The girl and the pup tumbled in the grass together, laughing and yipping with pure joy. "That is what we fought for," Jiwon said, coming to sit beside him. She was a commander now, in charge of all defense operations for the system, but she still made time to visit. "So that they could play together. So that both our species could grow up without fear." "It was worth it," Taeyang agreed. "All of it. The cold, the danger, the near-death experiences. Worth it for this moment right here." Hanul made a sound, a low rumble of contentment. Through the neural interface she now wore permanently, her words appeared on Taeyang's datapad. "You taught us that true strength is not about destruction. It is about preservation, not about taking life but protecting it. You showed us that even people who have done terrible things can choose to be better, can choose to save instead of destroy." "You saved me just as much as I saved you," Taeyang said. "Maybe more. You gave me a reason to stop running from my past. A reason to face each day,